Hello, world, and welcome back to the Glen Alex Show. I'm Glen Alex, licensed clinical social worker, wealth counselor, and author of Living in Total Health, the 2021 Indie Book Award winner for Health and Wellness, and finalist in Body, Mind, and Spirit. My life's work is about total health, and I am on a mission to help as many people as I can to be joyful, connected, confident, and complete. The life experience we call wealth, WELLTH, which is health plus other riches. I also believe that people living in total health, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, will right the world's wrongs and put an end to racism, sexism, ageism, elitism, homophobia, rape, and other forms of violence, and make the world a better place for all of us. That is my goal, and that is my path. And I hope you join me on this path to make the world a better place for all. On each episode of the Glen Alex Show, we focus on a different aspect of health because my work is about living in total health, and that includes the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And so for this episode, we're going to focus on nutrition. And I'm really excited about this one because when I came across your profile, I was like, oh yeah, I need to talk to her.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I have to say, you're not alone. I get that a lot.
Okay, good. You're in high demand. You're high demand. Everyone, please help me welcome Cassie Christopher to the Glen Alex Show. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent and so glad to be here. I have to tell you that I wish that social workers ruled the world. So I'm excited to talk to you and get to keep learning from you in your podcast because the world would be a better place. That's for sure.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. And you're my campaign manager.
That's right. That's right. Send me out.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so tell everyone what you do exactly.
Yeah, so I call myself a body positive registered dietitian. And I say that because oftentimes, you meet people and they'll say, what do you do? Right. And I say registered dietitian. And they immediately say something like, I love to juice, or don't look at my French fries. Like they immediately feel shame. And so I say, oh no, it's okay. Body positive, eat what you want. Food positive, maybe another way to say it. Um, and what I do is I help women 45 and up heal from emotional eating so that they can stop feeling obsessed with food and their bodies and use that mental energy to rule the world. No, do what they want. That's what I'm passionate about.
Oh my gosh, I love that body positive registered dietitian.
Yeah.
Because we have such negative, we're so self-critical. We are so very self-critical, and that actually psychologically imposes more damage on the metabolic processes than probably the food itself.
Oh, I could not agree more. That self-criticism and the impact on your stress cycle and, eventually your body, and even, stress impacts even like your blood vessels, right? Like it really has, like you say, this whole overarching effect. And interestingly, I talk about emotional eating. It's so interesting you bring up self-criticism because that's one of the primary things I work on with my clients. You think it would be about food, but often it comes down to the way that they are talking to themselves. Because what emotional eating is, a definition for you is eating to comfort or soothe. So rather than for physical nourishment or meeting energy needs or what have you, and on its own, it's fine, right? Like the sitcom breakup and then tub of ice cream with your girlfriends, whatever, right? Occasionally, not a big deal. But it becomes a problem when this becomes the way that you deal with hard things and good things in your life. And so the women I work with use food to numb or avoid their emotions. And self criticism certainly can play a big role in that.
Absolutely. And self-criticism can also trigger negative or unpleasant emotional experiences. So I thank you for doing this work because the world needs you.
I
The world
appreciate
needs
that.
you.
I take that affirmation. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what is it about women 45 and over? Why that particular demographic?
Yes. So if people are watching the video of me, I often get the question, "How old are you?" Right? Because I work with women peri and postmenopause, and I myself am pre-menopausal. So the cat's out of the bag.
Sorry to hear
Um,
that.
yes, yes, exactly. Um, but I love this population because not only, I mean, when I was working kind of generally as a dietitian and just working with any old person who came to me, and when I say any old, I'm not talking about age. That was weird. That was weird. I apologize.
It's
Uh,
all good.
any person who came to me, I found that I really had a heart for and loved and got the best results for women 45 and up. Like they were just my favorite people to talk to. And then
Okay.
learning about menopause and how that impacts women in their life, their transitions, hormones, all of these things, and realizing that that's such an underserved population. You know, oftentimes women go to doctors at that point in their life and hear like, it's just normal, or whatever, keep going. We have nothing to do for you. We have nothing to say for you. But I felt like I can help. And so that's where my passion lies.
Okay, that's really interesting when you speak about women 45 and over being underserved. Because I think about these athletes, female athletes who are winning Olympic gold medals after age 40. I do think you're right, though, that that population tends to be dismissed when it comes to medical things. Oh, it's just hormones, or it's just that time of life. You have empty nest. So I think the one-on-one personal care you give them, no wonder you have the best success with that group.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And it makes, like, exactly as you're saying, there's so many transitions at this point in life. And I laugh sometimes. I love research. I love to read research. I'm a total, scientific article nerd. And I laugh when I come across these studies where it's like, well, duh. My favorite is the ones where we see that stress eating is a thing. Like, okay, yeah, I'm so glad that we can see when people have high levels of cortisol that they, that they end up eating. Yes, stress eating is a thing that's very well established. But the other one is there was this great study done actually out of my home state of Seattle, Washington, where they studied women in this period of life, I think, 40s through 60s, and they found that it was the most stressful time in a woman's life. And you come to think of adult children, aging parents, more responsibility at work, maybe life transitions, maybe retirement, which everyone always thinks is going to be bliss, and for many women it ends up being actually very stressful and a difficult season. And so um, just recognizing that there may be more stressors in this time period. And of course, if then you're using food to avoid or numb your feelings, then that can lead to more emotional eating as well.
Yeah, because it tastes so good.
Well, that's right. And sometimes I hear from people and they're like, I just like food. Okay. Like, I just like food. There's nothing you can do for me. I just like food. And actually, there is something I can do for you if you're that person, because liking food is wonderful. But what can happen when you're, I mean, I don't know how to describe it other than maybe not living your best life, or, you're not dealing with your emotions and your desires. So, not just negative emotions, but positive ones too.
Okay.
Thinking about what is it that you want in life? What's going to make you feel good? How can you attain that? And I think a lot of women are living under what the philosopher Kate Mann calls human giver syndrome, where they are kind of laying down their desires and self-care in order to care for other people and help them achieve their dreams and desires. And of course there's some nobility to that, right? Like, it's a
Right.
beautiful thing to serve other people. Many of us enjoy that. And yet, it can lead women to not being able to do things they like, or get their self care, or go after their desires. And so then they use food to receive that pleasure, because food is pleasurable.
Yeah. I have digestive conditions, so I can't do the normal pastry,
Yeah.
flour-based foods.
Yeah.
I do like dark chocolate. I tend to overindulge in raw cashews and raw almonds
Yeah.
because they taste so good.
They do, they do. Although some fun research you might like to know about is recently, and Google this when we get off, they found that whole nuts, like a whole almond or a whole cashew, actually has less calories than was originally thought because a lot of it goes undigested. So maybe less of an impact than you initially thought.
Well, totally calorie wise. Thank you. That just gives me permission to eat more.
I'm all about that. But I
Well,
want go for it.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I want to say something. It's interesting you bring up, having a digestive condition, certain foods are off limits. And most of the women I work with have been on decades worth of diets, all the various kinds throughout their life as a way to try to control eating. And what ends up happening is that feeling of restriction, that feeling of deprivation actually leads to getting more pleasure and feeling more reward from food when you actually eat it. So, feeling deprived, feeling restricted can increase your motivation, which again, we kind of knew that already, but the research supports it. It can increase your motivation to go after those foods that feel off limits. And that's why a lot of women have ended up in this cycle of kind of restriction and deprivation with maybe some dieting to binging, indulgence, and just back and forth over a lifetime rather than making, say, steady progress.
Okay. So in your experience, have you are you aware of any of the fad dieting, the frequent dieting leading to digestive conditions?
So I'm not sure about that
Mhm.
actually. I'm not sure about research that say that would lead to digestive conditions. But certainly there is some research to suggest that yo-yo dieting or weight cycling may end up, for some people, not all, but for some people, it ends up in gaining more weight, than you ever lost, and more belly fat, more of that abdominal fat, which can be, metabolically active and also is an issue for women in the peri and postmenopausal years. And so there's uh, oftentimes I like to explain this to people because they often feel like with eating's out of control, which is how many people who emotionally eat feel. They say, "Oh, I'm in front of the kitchen cupboard," or "I'm at the drive-through, and like I almost don't even know how I got here. Like I do, but I don't." And if that's you, it's emotional eating, and you're just so you know, and, there is hope, but the hope is not to go on a diet and feel restricted and put yourself under this, kind of thinking like under a heavy thumb, but that's not the right metaphor. There's a better metaphor here of rules.
Okay. Oh, and I'm glad you mentioned, ended up in the drive-through, not really knowing how you got there, because that talks about mindlessness.
Mhm.
That's being unaware of what you're experiencing at any given moment, and that takes away our choicefulness.
You know
It
what I
doesn't
want
take
to
away responsibility, but it takes away our choices in the moment.
Yeah, yeah. And what I want to say about that is, you know, oftentimes what I see happening with the idea of mindfulness, the opposite of mindlessness in culture, is it can feel shaming when it's like, how did I get here? And you don't really know. And then you feel ashamed. And women are telling me I'm crying into my French fries, right? Like it can feel like, what is wrong with me? And yet, it's important to understand that that mindlessness happens as a coping technique. It is it doesn't feel safe to feel, or maybe you have a history of trauma that you need to kind of work out in yourself and your body, and so that can make it so that it doesn't feel safe to be fully alert and aware of how you got there. So I just want to say that if someone is struggling with that, there is hope. And I would really encourage this person, this hypothetical person, we'll call her Nancy. I would encourage her to think about what if I believed that everything I was doing was me doing the best I can do in the moment.
Mhm.
there's this parenting philosophy out there, and I have a toddler. So I'm, hearing all of this, that like your kids aren't misbehaving. Your kids are doing the best they can within their developmental, um, you know, kind of growth, and based on how much their needs are met emotionally and physically. And I'm like, yeah, yes, that's emotional eating too. You're doing
And
the best you can.
that is true. And what you described about the phases in childhood is all still true in adulthood.
Yes.
We still go through those growth phases. They just look a little differently. And I see no shame in
Yes.
becoming aware at any time. Whenever you can come back to the present moment, that's pretty powerful stuff. So don't cry in those French fries. Then you can decide if you want to eat them or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Celebrate the awareness. I love
yes,
that.
yes, I do. Oh my gosh, thank you for bringing that up. Now, in your blog, I forget the title of it, forgive me.
That's all right.
You do mention 3 hormones that impact emotional eating and weight gain.
Yeah.
One of them I never heard of before. So, because we're always so estrogen and
Yes.
testosterone focused.
Yes.
Can you talk about the 3?
Yes. Yeah. So cortisol is the first one. Ghrelin, maybe the one you hadn't heard
Yes.
of. Yes. And it's spelled really funny too. And then the third being menopausal hormones, kind of these sex hormones, which I just lumped together. And yeah, it's important to understand, again, same as understanding that a trauma history or your diet history can impact your relationship with food. Again, understanding it's not your fault. There's no shame. You can get help, right? Like there's hope. I think it's the same with understanding hormones, that there is stuff going on behind the scenes that's leading to eating, that you're not a victim. You can do something about it. But it's helpful to understand so that you don't beat yourself up. And that goes back to that self-criticism we were talking about.
Right.
So as I mentioned, cortisol is the primary stress hormone in the body. That's the fight, flight, or freeze hormone. And that leads to, cortisol leads to more belly fat again, weight gain, all these things when it's chronically elevated. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of studies to show that when cortisol is high, people are going to eat. Now, cortisol also controls your sleep wake cycle. And research shows for every hour of sleep that you are deprived, which if I'm anxious, my sleep's definitely going out the window. So I know this for sure. You eat an additional 385 calories.
Wow.
That's
That's
a
a lot.
that's a big handful of nuts. Right?
Yes, it is. That's a movie's worth of nuts.
Yes, exactly. And so recognizing, wow, this it may not be right that you have poor willpower or poor self-control or poor self-discipline. It may be that you have these stress cycles happening in your body, and cortisol can be raised by a lot more than just psychological stress. So the menopausal transition, research shows, when these hormones are changing, that raises cortisol. Inflammation in your body. So if you have underlying disease processes, that can raise cortisol, sleep disturbance, blood sugar imbalance. There's really a lot of things, honestly, that can imbalance cortisol, and especially if you're struggling chronically. So it's not a one-time thing, but a more, happening all the time type of thing, like in a disease process, an inflammatory disease process. It can become a real issue and a real driver of eating.
Okay. And that other one that I can't remember or pronounce,
Ghrelin. Yes.
ghrelin?
Yes, ghrelin. Think of gremlin, and that'll probably just confuse you. But now you're confused. So ghrelin is an appetite hormone. And the ghrelin is interesting. So the longer that you've gone from eating, so say you ate, 30 minutes ago, ghrelin starts to build up in your brain saying it's time to eat. But now it's been an hour since you ate, it builds up a little more. It's been 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. Ghrelin starts to build up so high and is screaming at your brain.
Okay.
You need to eat. You need to eat right now. I don't care what it is. Go to the vending machine, right? So it's that, like, it's been a long time since you've eaten, or maybe you didn't eat much during the day, and now you're at home at night and people are going, why am I snacking on all the crackers and my glass of wine to unwind while I'm making dinner? Why can't I just make dinner? I'm eating so much. Ghrelin. And so the answer to that, and actually this helps with cortisol balancing too, is to eat regularly throughout the day. And I know that's so hard. I just had a client who said, she was a little embarrassed. She goes, I haven't been eating very regularly, but I finally set a timer. And she was embarrassed that she just finally set a timer. I'm like, hey, no shame, right? Like we all get there. We have to see it's a problem first, but it makes a difference.
Yeah, whatever you need to do to make it work for you.
Mhm.
So, are you recommending the 6 small meals a day, if that's possible, or maybe just 3 evenly spaced meals, or is it individual?
Yeah, it's totally individual what's going to work for someone. So, I love the idea of intuitive and mindful eating and paying attention to our own hunger cues. And yet, for the women I work with, that's not an accessible starting point because usually they've been ignoring their hunger cues for so
Mhm.
long that they're
Okay.
just not really there or they don't know how to listen to them. And so I like to start people off on eating, making sure they're getting some protein and fiber about every 4 hours throughout the day and to start to see how does that feel. Oftentimes, especially for those who emotionally eat at night, so after dinner, that simple routine can help balance blood sugar, calm down the cortisol, keeps ghrelin at bay, and they find that like 50 to 75, sometimes 90% of their nighttime cravings are gone from that one simple routine.
Okay. And that is extra fiber and protein.
Yeah, just making sure, not even extra, just making sure you're getting some
Okay.
regularly throughout the day. Where if you might have been someone who skipped lunch or, really tiny little, crackers or cookie for breakfast and then, didn't eat until 3, like eating regularly can have such a big difference for those emotional eaters.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Um, so with emotional eating and the cortisol thing, um, stress is coming. The holidays are coming.
Yeah.
And there's pressure from family to retail pressure, it's just all coming. So how do you recommend people cope with emotional eating during that time?
Yeah. Well, I think from that practical, what do you do about food standpoint, that protein and fiber a combo throughout the day is a great way to go. Especially at big holiday meals, what can happen is you just skip breakfast or you skip lunch. This big meal is coming, and so then it ends up being that ghrelin builds up and up and up, and you eat way more than you might have eaten if you'd been eating regularly. So that's one strategy, that kind of practical boots on the ground type of strategy. But
Okay.
from a how do you care for yourself well strategy, I encourage people, and this is what I do in my own life, to think about what is it that you want out of this time. Again, noticing what your desires are and going after them is part of how you heal emotional eating. So, what is it that you want for your, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever it may be? What's important to you, what's not important to you. And once you've defined that for yourself, and it's the same with what are you going to eat on the table? Like, what is it that you actually like? Do you like green bean casserole? I don't. I don't feel sorry to miss that, right? Yes. I don't know who does, but it always shows up, right? And it seems to be gone at
It's
the
like
end of the meal.
cake.
Yeah, exactly. And so you decide both generally around celebration and also around meals, what is it that you want, what's important to you, and then do those things. And then maybe you can set some boundaries and say no even to the rest to help preserve some of your sanity.
Okay, those are really good tips. Now, how do you see, we're always told that calories in versus calories out equals weight loss or weight
Sure.
gain or weight management. When hormones are impacting weight, how does physical activity fit in there? Does it matter? Uh, Tell me, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you asked this because, especially like you say, hormones impacting weight, the metabolism can slow down with aging, with menopause. And then even if with diet, a history of dieting. So it can be a lot going against women in terms of metabolism. And movement is a great way to get that metabolism going. However, what I see happening to women before they start working with me is they start eating less and less and less and moving more and more and more, and the scale doesn't seem to change. And so there's, two things that I think are important to pay attention to. One is, how do you care for your metabolism well to make sure that your body has the ability to make and use energy as well as it can? Again, the protein and the fiber, believe it or not, research suggests can really help get that metabolism going, as can eating regularly. As can movement. So there's some things you can do, but then also there's a piece of this that I think comes to play into acceptance. Uh, Easy for me to say, right? I'm not in this, I'm not in that age range yet. And yet I know, and I am affected by both the thin ideal, of beauty, and the age ideal of beauty. And so as you age, I think redefining what beauty means to you and what health means to you, again, to you, what you desire, how you desire to feel, and going after that is going to be a much more powerful and centered way of living, where you can accept who you are and be compassionate to yourself rather than trying to chase some unattainable ideal.
Okay, I totally agree with that. So would you then recommend that for women in that situation, they still just continue to do their activities they enjoy, do something more mobility based, or something more strenuous, more weight?
Yeah, it totally depends, but the thing that you're always going to keep doing, like the most important thing with movement is that you do it, that you do it. That is the most important thing. And so, what are you going to do? What do you love? What do you enjoy? Maybe for some women, this is going to take a little trial and error, to figure it
Okay,
out. Maybe you need to
okay,
go to some classes and do some different things to discover what you like. I've had people tell me, oh my gosh, that they're allergic to exercise, right? Like, and I think it's because, they're I grew up in a Title IX kind of generation where if there was a boy sport for something, there was a girl sport for something, and it was acceptable for girls to be athletic. But many of the women I work with did not grow up in that situation where, being athletic and moving your body was something that they were accustomed to from a young age. They didn't like the feeling of sweating. It's uncomfortable, right? Like, I'd rather eat. That's more fun.
yes.
And so, really going on a journey to discover what you like, what you enjoy, what you can sustain, that's going to be the best starting point. And then you can fine tune and add on to that, like bone strengthening and, metabolism boosting and all of that. Those can be great extras, but having a base of something you enjoy is definitely the way to go,
And just do it.
and that you will do. Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that makes sense. It's intuitive, yet we need to hear it and have it reinforced. You got to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're having trouble doing it, I think oftentimes, again, women look to themselves and say, like, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm such a capable, strong woman. I work with these women who are amazing. You know what I mean? The things they do are incredible. And they're like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this consistently? And oftentimes there's a real barrier there. Like, there's a reason that this isn't working for you, and sometimes it has nothing to do even with your life, but it's like your work schedule or this, that, and the other. And, usually there's things you can do about it. And that's wonderful. And that's part of what I do, is help people problem solve. So if you need a problem solver, hit me up. But just to know, like, stop and take a breath, like pause and think about what are the barriers to getting the movement. Like, if you can dream for a second that it's not just some personal failing, with you.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Now, can you take a minute, just walk us through the process of working with you from
Sure.
intake to how you individualize plans?
Yeah. Yeah. So right now I've got a couple offerings. One is my signature program called the Stressless Weight Mastery. And that is supporting women who have a desire to lose a moderate amount of weight, for their health or what have you, while also working towards body acceptance and healing emotional eating. And then I'm also offering that's a group experience. I'm also offering some one-on-one coaching as well. I have room in my schedule. I've just created actually the 6-month package I'm so excited about, where we will, if someone is struggling with emotional eating, struggling with acceptance, we will dive into these things we've been talking about. How do you
Okay.
want to feel? How are you going to get there? How are you going to feel pleasure and good things in your life so you don't need that from food? And then also all the other things, balancing the hormones, taking care of your nervous system, really implementing self-care strategies and figuring out why you haven't implemented these same strategies, like the movement, right? That you've known all along you should be doing, and somehow you're not doing it, right? So really digging into that, figuring out what's going on, so that by the end of 6 months, you have a direction for how you want to feel in your life. You can know that you're caring for your health, without being worried about the burden of, what it may mean that your eating may mean, and then feeling in control and comfortable in your own skin. And as you can tell, I'm super excited about that.
They sound like wonderful programs.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how do you incorporate, and I'm just making an assumption here that you incorporate labs in your work with your clients. How do you incorporate it? Do you just do pre, post, or along the way?
Yeah, so I actually don't use laboratory data in my work with
Okay.
my clients, that I'm ordering. As a registered dietitian, I can't necessarily order lab data in every state, but oftentimes taking what someone is doing with their doctor. So the women I work with, oftentimes, like, maybe they have psoriatic arthritis and type 1 diabetes, and want to be mobile to be able to walk around a college campus with their daughter in a couple years, kind of thing. And so we're able to actually positively influence those labs. I'm always getting these text messages, oh, my blood sugar is better than it's ever been, and all these things. But I'm just not measuring them, but I am qualified to help you with them and talk about them.
Okay. Okay. I'm a proponent of getting annual labs. I get my labs
Mhm.
done every year when I get a physical, because I want to know what's happening on the inside of my body. I know what it looks like on the outside and how it functions, but I still want to know what's going on the inside. So I think the metabolic panel, the renal panel, the thyroid panel, those are real important to know about this weight management stuff too.
Definitely. Yeah. And oftentimes as I'm working with folks, if we come across, they're not getting the results they want, something's happening, it's like, all right, you need to go get these labs done. And that's such a great reminder. It's also important to know that if you live in a larger body, there is, research shows, a bias, a medical bias against people who live in a larger body. And so sometimes it feels unsafe for these people to go to the doctor because their doctor gets so focused and fixated on their weight.
Right.
And that's the only recommendation they'll make, or they'll feel judged or shamed. And so I want people to know, if that's you, find a different doctor.
Hmm.
Like, there are people out there who will support you. Some words you might look for if you don't want your doctor to talk to you about weight loss are things like weight neutral or health at every size. Those are words you can kind of look for in bios. If you Google health at every size practitioners, you can find even a database for people who practice from that weight neutral approach. So I want to say that, yes, these labs are so important. And again, if you're feeling uncomfortable going to the doctor, that's something that working with someone like me, or someone who you feel safe with, can help you feel empowered to have the conversations you need to have, and also say, no, thank you. Please do not talk about my weight anymore. That's enough.
And for your clients who are living in a larger body and are resistant to going to a doctor, within the last year and a half in Nevada, labs are offering, people can order their own tests.
Oh, really?
They do. They have to engage with their teletherapy, telemedicine
Mhm.
physician, but they can go online and order the test themselves. So that might be a way for you to get the labs without them having to go and be body shamed.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. I want
Yes,
everyone to hear that.
yes.
Google around your area or just move to Nevada, I think is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, we need it. Oh my gosh, this is amazing stuff. Thank you so much for educating me and helping others understand a little more about their bodies, particularly women over 45 and over. So, how can someone reach out to you if they have a question, they want to participate in one of your programs?
Yeah, yeah, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Cassie Christopher RD. I do have a free guide, and if you're watching on video, you're going to see me look away because I just named it. It's a new one for everyone. I'm so excited, and I don't know the full name yet. It's You're Done Dieting, but Still Want to Heal Emotional Eating, a roadmap to achieve peace and freedom with food and feel comfortable in your own skin for women over 45 who've tried it all. A mouthful.
There's a lot to remember.
I may need to shorten it, but I just felt like it was all so good. And you can get that at CassieChristopher.net/free. You can get that free guide. And that's a great way to find out more about, you get, free advice from me. And then you can find out more about how I can help you.
Okay, amazing. Everyone, please reach out to Cassie with your questions to get her free guide. And so we can all live in better health.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. I appreciate you. I appreciate your work. And I seriously have learned some things today.
Good. I'm super excited. And yeah, like I already told you, I'm just in love with social workers. I think what you do is so needed in the world. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Glen Alex Show. Please like, subscribe, and share.
Refresh your spirit with a nourishing thought.
Please allow me to leave you with this nourishing thought. Best-selling author Karen Salmonson said, "Emotional eating doesn't heal emotional issues. Stop trying to stuff down your feelings with food." That's very clear, folks. Emotional eating does not work. While consuming comfort foods, alcohol, and other substances to dull, mask, or avoid emotional pain may provide a temporary distraction from that pain, it doesn't resolve it. So the issue that triggered the emotional eating in the first place remains. And emotional eating causes more problems than it solves. Unintended weight gain, unresolved stress. We know how those things negatively impact physical and mental health. And don't get me wrong, I totally understand what emotional eating is about because I've succumbed to it myself. There have been several times in my life where emotional upheaval had led me to comfort foods and alcohol. However, when the food was digested and the alcohol buzz wore off, the issue was still there. So emotional eating does not work. And I had to learn that about myself. And I had to learn how to better manage my emotions and stress. So I didn't reach for comfort foods automatically. You can learn that as well. And in fact, it's just reconnecting with the part of you that already knows how to do this stuff. So to help you reconnect with that, please read my blog on emotional eating on glenalex.com to give you some direction and to show you how I did it through my EAT method. Because I want you to be well on every level. So please, glenalex.com, read my blog, reach out for help, and you can do this. And until next time, be well.
Glen Alex Show.